What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who classic review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 6th Doctor Colin Baker story, The Trial of a Time Lord, The Ultimate Foe. These are the final two parts, the final story of The Trial of a Time Lord. I've been quite a while going through this because Colin Baker doesn't have that many stories. I mean, he only has, if you count all the Trial of a Time Lord stories as 4 separate stories, which I've done, that I do count them as that, then he still only has 11 stories. So yeah, his era is very short, so because of that I've kind of been having big gaps in between his reviews, you know, trying to get other doctors in there as well. So we are finally, after, I don't know, probably 2 months or maybe even more, we're finally at the end of Trial of a Time Lord. So this is the final story, The Ultimate Foe. It's only a 2-parter, so it's a pretty quick one to get through, but anyway, let's get started. This is The Trial of a Time Lord, The Ultimate Foe by Robert Holmes and Pippin Jane Baker. The Doctor has tried to prove his innocence, but the Valeyard is certain of his guilt and will stop at nothing to carry out a sentence of death. But there is a surprise witness waiting in the wings, one who knows the truth. With the trial in disarray, the Doctor flees into the Matrix to confront his enemy, into a nightmarish world of torture and punishment. Trapped within, he will have to fight for his life against the ultimate foe. So that's the little, very short synopsis on the back of the DVD. Pretty interesting. This is obviously, The Trial of a Time Lord is a whole season worth of story. It's a massive story arc for season 23. 14 episodes long altogether. 3 stories which are 4 episodes each, and then this last story is 2 episodes. So this was the penultimate thing for the end, to see where it all ended up. So I was interested to see what this last kind of part, this last story in the Trial of a Time Lord series, what it would have to offer. So anyway, let's get started with the cast. So Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor, yeah, he's good in this one. I'm definitely gonna say right now that I much prefer Colin Baker's in season 23 compared to season 22. He's just written so much better, and yeah, he's just so much more of an interesting character. There's definitely a darker side to him here, but you know, a darker side towards the Master, towards the Valeyard mainly, and towards kind of the Time Lord Court in general, you know. Yeah, I really like Colin Baker in this story. It's definitely one of his best performances, and yeah, just generally he is good in this one. We've got Bonnie Langford as Mel Bush, who's fine in this story. She only has one screamy moment, thankfully. So the rest of the time she's actually pretty good, actually. I did quite enjoy Mel in this one compared to, you know, from what I've seen of her since, well, before I suppose, but since in story order. But yeah, she was fine in this. She had a decent amount to do, and yeah, generally was good in this story, I suppose. Probably one of my favourites for Mel, because I'm going to be honest, she's a character that I don't really like. I will actually mention Michael Jaston as the Valeyard, because he's a very big part of, especially this part. My chair is squeaking like mad, I'm sorry if you can hear that. Yeah, the Valeyard was really good. I think he's an interesting character. We find out a little bit more about him in this story, which is interesting and we'll get into later. But yeah, generally I thought he was acted well and was an interesting character. And then we've also got Anthony Ainley as the Master, who, to be honest, doesn't do a whole lot here, but he's here and he does enough, I suppose, and yeah, with what he's got, he's pretty good. Alright, so now we go into the good and the bad, starting with the good. The Doctor and the Master agreeing with each other. So the Master appears on the screen in the courtroom, and he is in the Matrix. He's talking to them from the Matrix, and he's kind of siding with the Doctor in a way, saying that, yeah, there has been something going on with the Matrix here. Look, I've managed to get into the Matrix, so it's not completely, you know, impossible to get into. So yeah, there is something going on here, and I like how they do kind of have a little bit, you know, the Doctor and the Master they're almost agreeing with each other, they're almost teaming up with each other to team up on the Valeyard. And I find that interesting. Of course, the ultimate thing is that the Master, he still wants to destroy the Doctor, but in this scenario he is somewhat helping him out because, you know, he knows who the Valeyard is, and it's just an interesting little concept, a little bit confusing here and there, and there's a lot of that throughout this story, to be honest, but a lot of confusing stuff. But yeah, it was just, yeah, it's always interesting to see the Doctor and the Master agreeing and kind of working with each other. It's definitely an interesting little, you know, bit of chemistry going on there compared to what we usually see with them. The Doctor going into the Matrix, I mean, it's just kind of funny to me that a complete coincidence of the timing of watching this episode and also with watching The Deadly Assassin, 2 classic reviews ago, I reviewed The Deadly Assassin, which is the first story at which we see the Matrix. The Doctor goes into the Matrix. The Master's also there as well in that one. And then I've just reviewed The Timeless Children, Series 12's finale, which involves the Matrix and the Master again. And then now, the next week, I'm reviewing the next classic review for The Ultimate Foe, which also involves the Matrix and the Master. So it's a complete coincidence. I did not expect that to happen at all. That's just a complete coincidence. But yeah, we've just kind of got a Matrix-filled month here or so. Matrix-filled few weeks. But yeah, it's always interesting seeing the Matrix, and it's just an interesting thing. And yeah, generally the scenes in there, very atmospheric. I thought the direction in this episode especially was really good. Some really good shots in this episode actually. You know, close-ups on the Doctor and just the smoke in the background behind him. And yeah, just some really good shots here, especially within the Matrix scenes, and that whole setting I thought was very eerie, very creepy. The Valeyard is the darkest parts of the Doctor. Now, I didn't really know how to think of this. Once again, with the whole Timeless Children thing, by the way, I'm about to give spoilers for the Timeless Children, so skip ahead 30 seconds or so if you don't want to hear them. But the whole thing in the Timeless Children about, you know, the Master is the Timeless Child. No, sorry, not the Master. The Doctor is the Timeless Child. I'm really not a big fan of that, and I was a bit worried with this whole the Valeyard is the Doctor thing. But this is the way I see it, because it wasn't fully explored and explained of exactly who the Valeyard is. Now, yes, he's the Doctor, but the Master mentions that he's the darkest side, the darkest parts of the Doctor. That is the Valeyard. He's a mix of all the darkest emotions that the Doctor has ever had. So, because they don't fully explain it, in my head, I see it as the Valeyard's kind of a possible future for the Doctor, because the Master explains that, you know, this is you from somewhere in between your 12th and 13th regeneration, which would kind of put him, I don't know, it wouldn't really put him in between Capaldi and Whittaker. It would put him between what, oh god, because you've got the John Hurt Doctor in there, so that's 10, 11, so between Smith and Capaldi, I think, maybe? Yeah, or maybe Tennant and Smith, I can't remember, somewhere like there anyway, but it's not necessarily that's the Doctor in the future. We know that's not the Doctor in the future. It's what the Doctor could possibly become in the future, if all his hate and anger and the dark side of him gets kind of takes over. That is what the Doctor could be. So for me, it's more of an alternate kind of future sort of thing. So because I see it that way, it doesn't really bother me too much. I actually think it's quite an interesting idea, but I suppose it depends on how you kind of, you know, picture what the Valeyard is, if it is actually the Doctor, and just all these different things. Yeah, just with how I see it, I think it's pretty interesting. We get to see the Master's TARDIS. I think we have seen glimpses of the Master's TARDIS here and there throughout the classic series, but we get to see it here, and I like how it's basically just the Doctor's TARDIS, but it's got black walls instead of white walls, which I think is quite interesting. It just, I mean, it's a bit weird, but at the same time, yeah, you kind of would expect. I mean, the TARDIS is customizable, so yeah, the Master having black walls in his TARDIS, it makes sense, I suppose. I mean, this Master that we know, Delgado and Anthony Ainley, to be honest, both pretty much always wear all black, so it suits them, and I think it works well. Glitz is too interested in the value of the Master's jewel to be hypnotized. The Master's trying to hypnotize Glitz, but he's, you know, you think he's being hypnotized, but then he's just like, I actually just want to know how much this jewel that you're trying to hypnotize me with is worth, and you know, because he's a criminal and he's a thief, and I just thought that was quite funny. That was a nice little scene there. So instead of hypnotizing him, he just kind of bribes him with all the treasure. So that's interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much all the good stuff I've got to say. So on to the bad. There's not really a lot to talk about here. There's just a couple of little things. First of all, the Time Lords don't even try to stop Mel from taking the Matrix key the second time. So she goes to get the Matrix key the first time off the Keeper of the Matrix, and he kind of trips her up and stops her. But the second time, she literally just runs up to him, grabs the key, he kind of goes, oh no, and she just runs off to the Matrix, and we don't see anybody chasing her or anything. Yeah, it seemed a bit kind of convenient, in my opinion. The only other thing really is just that this story I found can be quite confusing at times, because we've kind of this was a 14-part story, but where this is a two-parter to finish it all off. The Master only just appears in this part. We figure out who the Valiard is in this part. We 100% realize that the Valiard is the one interfering in this part with the Matrix. I mean, there was talk about that in the previous part, so that, you know, something's not right here. But and you know, it was kind of definitely largely hinted at that the Valiard was gonna be the bad guy of the story, but 100% gets confirmed in this one. And then I just feel like towards the end it does kind of end a bit abruptly. It ends quite quickly with the whole machine thing, and yeah, it was okay, but it did end a bit quick for my liking. And for a story that's, you know, built up over 14 episodes, I thought, you know, it could have been resolved in a bit more of an interesting and not such a rushed way. So, a rating for The Ultimate Foe. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it is actually my favourite kind of part of The Trial of a Time Lord. I've actually given each story 0.5 more as far as I've gone through, because, you know, I gave The Mysterious Planet a 6. I gave, what's the second one called? I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head now, but the second part, I gave that a 6.5. I gave Terror of the Vervoids a 7. I'm giving this a 7.5. I just think they're all kind of marginally better than the rest. I think ultimately Terror of the Vervoids would be my favourite, but that one does tend to drag towards the end a little bit and in the middle. If that one was a more condensed story, I think that would be my favourite part. But as it goes, this is only 2 parts long, doesn't really drag at all, it's just a bit rushed here and there. So yeah, a 7.5 is what I'm going to give it, and it does mean that it is my favourite part of Season 23's Trial of a Time Lord. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, link is in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video.